Sadasatcha Yad Atmakam. Devahuti said, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, kindly explain the characteristics of the Supreme Person and his energy. For both of these are the causes of his manifest and unmanifest creation. Okay. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Prakriti, or material nature, is connected with both the Supreme Lord and the living entities. Just as a woman is connected with her husband as a wife and with her children as a mother. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that he impregnates Mother Nature with children, living entities, and thereafter all species of living entities become manifest. The relationship of all living entities with material nature has been explained. Now, an understanding of the relationship between material nature and the Supreme Lord is sought by Devahuti. The product of that relationship is stated to be the manifest and unmanifest material world. The unmanifest material world is the subtle Mahatattva, and from that Mahatattva, the material manifestation has emerged. In the Vedic literatures, it is said that by the glance of the Supreme Lord, the total material energy is impregnated. Then everything is born of material nature. It is also confirmed in the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita that under his glance, Adhyakshina, under his direction and by his will, nature is working. It is not that the nature works blindly. After understanding the position of the conditioned souls in relation to the material nature, Devahuti wanted to know how nature works under the direction of the Lord and what the relationship is between the material nature and the Lord. In other words, she wanted to learn the characteristics of the Supreme Lord in relation to material nature. The relationship of the living entities with matter and that of the Supreme Lord with matter are certainly not on the same level. Although the Mayavadis may interpret it in that way, when it is said that the living entities are bewildered, the Mayavadi philosophers ascribe this bewilderment to the Supreme Lord, but that is not applicable. The Lord is never bewildered. That is the difference between personalists and impersonalists. Devahuti is not unintelligent. That means she is intelligent, a double negative. She has enough intelligence to understand that the living entities are not on the level of the Supreme Lord because the living entities are infinitesimal. They become bewildered or conditioned by material nature. But this does not mean that the Supreme Lord is also conditioned or bewildered. The difference between the conditioned soul and the Lord is that the Lord is the Lord, the master of material nature, and he is therefore not subject to its control. He is controlled neither by spiritual nature nor by material nature. He is the supreme controller himself, and he cannot be compared to the ordinary living entities who are controlled by the laws of material nature. Two words used in this verse are sat and asat. The cosmic manifestation is asat. It does not exist. But the material energy of the Supreme Lord is sat, or ever existing. Material nature is ever existing in its subtle form as the energy of the Lord, but it sometimes manifests this non-existent or temporarily existent nature, the cosmos. An analogy may be made with the father and the mother. The mother and the father exist, but sometimes the mother begets children. Similarly, this cosmic manifestation, which comes from the unmanifest material nature of the Supreme Lord, sometimes appears and again disappears, but the material nature is ever existing. And the Lord is the supreme cause for both the subtle and gross manifestations of this material world. Okay, so this is full of transcendental knowledge, this verse, text 9, Canto 3, chapter 26. And it says, Devahuti said, the Supreme Personality of Godhead kindly, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, kindly explain the characteristics of the Supreme Person and his energies. For both of these are the causes of this manifest and unmanifest creation. Well, only a pure devotee like Devahuti can explain such a mysterious thing. And in the purport, it says, Prakriti or material nature is connected with both the Supreme Lord and the living entities, just as a woman is connected with her husband as a wife and with her children as a mother. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that he impregnates Mother Nature with children, living entities, and thereafter all species of living entities become manifest. The relationship of all living entities with material nature has been explained. Now, an understanding of the relationship between material nature and the Supreme Lord is sought by Devahuti. The product of that relationship is stated to be the manifest and unmanifest material world. The unmanifest material world is the subtle Mahatattva, and from that Mahatattva, the material manifestation has emerged. Okay, well, everything begins microscopically and eventually grows or expands. So when we are dealing with the material nature, it is actually bewildering for the living entity because something begins microscopically and then expands and becomes gigantic. And so how can you deal with such a thing? Because it is beyond the, let's say, rational understanding of a human being. So there are many things like that in nature. But to be able to understand it is a challenge. So, for example, you can have a microscopic, let's say, a very small, let's say, bug, but it can grow and now it becomes a big, uh, a big bug that's flying around and eventually it can also produce other bugs. And now you are not sure what to do because something that started out to be small and insignificant now has become big and multiplied into many bugs. And eventually the living entity is overcome by such, let's say, expansion. So here it says that um, in the Vedic literatures, it is said that by the glance of the Supreme Lord, the total material energy is impregnated, and then everything is born of material nature. Well, this is something that is mysterious. Uh, Simply by glancing, uh, things become created and they grow. Uh, so it's very hard to say understand that. That's why it says it is also confirmed in the ninth chapter of Bhagavad Gita that under his glance, Adyakshena, under his direction and by his will, nature is working. In other words, the Lord does not actually have to touch material nature. He can simply glance and it's created. And it's created by his direction and by his will. Nature is working. It is not that nature works blindly. Well, without hearing this explanation, we would think that nature is working blindly. After understanding the position of the conditioned souls in relation to the material nature, Devahuti wanted to know how nature works under the direction of the Lord and what the relationship is between the material nature and the Lord. In other words, she wanted to learn the characteristics of the Supreme Lord in relation to the material nature. Well, obviously, Devahuti is a very exceptional person and is asking very fundamental questions to understand how material nature is working. So every one of us is under the control of the laws of material nature. What are those laws? Well, you have eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Those things are laws that uh, uh, limit the living entity. And and you also have uh, other things that influence the living entity. So, under no circumstance is the living entity independent. We're always dependent on the mercy of Krishna. However, we develop this false concept that we're independent and also that we are controllers of the material nature. But one hurricane or one earthquake immediately will let us understand that we're not actually the controllers. And all the things that we produce can be destroyed in a period of a few minutes sometimes. So therefore, there are such things as earthquakes, and there are uh, flooding, and there is flooding, and there is pestilence, and so forth. Like for example, the United States Army is the strongest army in the universe, in the world. But yet, when there's a hurricane, the army can't do anything. They can't stop it. It just tolerates whatever destruction takes place, and then tries to clean it up and tries to rebuild again. But they can't stop it. So it means that there are other forces in nature that are beyond the scope of, well, let's say beyond the control of human beings. Human beings can, uh, after a hurricane, clean everything up and repair things, but you can't stop the hurricane. Uh, so there are unstoppable things in nature that just proves that we're not in control, that there's someone else in control of these things. Uh, so all we can do is just be patient and watch all the damage being done, and then try to clean everything up and repair things and hope for the best. So therefore, everything we think is like made of, let's say, impenetrable, buildings made out of concrete and so forth. All of those things can be destroyed with one uh, with one uh, uh, let's say an earthquake. The earthquake can crack all this skyscrapers and everything, and you suddenly realize that what you thought was impenetrable, what you thought was uh, eternal, you realize that everything is uh, basically subject to superior forces that are not controlled by the human beings. This should help us become humble and to understand that there's a greater there's a greater force or uh, let's say personalities in the material nature that are controlling things. So you have the controller like Indra of the rain, and you have the controller of Varuna, the oceans, and so forth. These are all living entities, but they're superior to ordinary human beings, and they're controllers of different parts of material nature. So earlier, you have like the American Indians, and even you go back farther, and you have uh, the Vedic tradition, where there's an understanding that there's such people as Indra, Varuna, and so forth, who are controlling uh, these uh, different parts of material nature. And we're not able as individuals to uh, overcome the control of these supernatural beings. Like Indra is controlling the rain, and Varuna is controlling the oceans, and so forth. So these superior controllers of nature are uh, can be what you would call uh, pacified by performing yajnas. That's why there are so many yajnas that are recommended to please Indra, Varuna, and other demigods. However, if you uh, just please Krishna, then all the demigods will be pleased. So that is the what we call superior knowledge of devotees. And how to please Krishna? Well, it's by engaging in devotional service. You don't. So instead of trying to please each demigod one by one, if you simply please Krishna, all the demigods are pleased. This is not understood by everyone, but devotees understand this. So a devotee just engages in devotional service to please Krishna, and then the all the demigods are satisfied by such service of the devotee. You don't have to perform yagyas or different ceremonies for each individual demigod. If you please Krishna, then all the demigods are pleased. The demigods function under the uh, direction of Krishna. Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. So if you please Krishna, then the demigods will be pleased. But if you try to please each demigod individually, it's very easy to make mistakes, and those mistakes can have catastrophic results. So why risk making those type of mistakes when it's very easy to please Krishna with simply in this age of Kali chanting Hare Krishna and following the regulative principles and always uh, engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. Okay, so there are very, let's say, mysterious things going on in nature. For example, it says in the Vedic literatures, it is said that by the glance of the Supreme Lord, the total material energy is impregnated. Impregnated with what? Seeds of living entities. And then everything is born of material nature. It is also confirmed in the ninth chapter of Bhagavad Gita that under his glance, Adyakshena, under his direction by his will, nature is working. Now, do the scientists know this? No, they don't know it. They see it, but they don't know who's controlling it. They try and control it, but oftentimes they can't control it. So, therefore, they say, oh, well, that's nature. But behind nature, you have the demigods. And behind the demigods, you have Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, the scientists won't accept that, but we know that that is the actual uh, situation. And therefore, instead of trying to please every individual demigod, we please all the demigods by pleasing Krishna. And if we please Krishna, then all these problems of material life, the hurricanes, the earthquakes, the pestilence, everything like that will eventually not become so important. And so, therefore, living a Krishna conscious life is very important. There are places in the world where people are following Sanatana Dharma very seriously, and they're living very peaceful lives without too much stress and too much hard work also. Because when Krishna is pleased, then the demigods are pleased also simultaneously. And the demigods are the supply agents of the Lord. So you have Indra, you have Varuna, you have these different demigods that control with supernatural powers the different functions. When we read the Shastras, we begin to understand that. Now, you don't have to, for example, perform rituals for each one of the demigods. If you simply worship Krishna, all the demigods will be satisfied. But the mundane, let's say, followers of Vedic Dharma, they want to try and please individually each of the demigods. Well, you have actually you have millions of demigods, but you have certain ones that are most prominent. And instead of doing that, if you simply please Krishna, who is not a demigod, he's the supreme personality of Godhead, all the demigods or the supply agents of nature will be pleased, and everything will work harmoniously. So here it says, the relationship of the living entities with matter and that of the Supreme Lord with matter are certainly not on the same level, although the Mayavadis may interpret it in that way. When it is said that the living entities are bewildered. The Mayavadi philosophers ascribe this bewilderment to the Supreme Lord, but that is not applicable. The Lord is never bewildered. That is the difference between personalists and impersonalists. Devahuti is not unintelligent, meaning she's very intelligent. She has enough intelligence to understand that the living entities are not on the level of the Supreme Lord. Because the living entities are infinitesimal, they become bewildered or conditioned by material nature. But this does not mean that the Supreme Lord is also conditioned or bewildered. The difference between the conditioned soul and the Lord is that the Lord is the Lord, the master of material nature, and he is therefore not subject to it, meaning nature's control. He is controlled neither by spiritual nature nor by material nature. He is the supreme controller himself, and he cannot be compared to the ordinary living entities who are controlled by the laws of material nature. Well, that's very significant statement. Two words used in this verse are sat and asat. Sat means what is eternal, and asat means what is temporary. The cosmic manifestation is asat. It does not exist. Okay, when it says it does not exist, it means it's not eternal. But the material energy of the Supreme Lord is sat, or ever existing. Material nature is ever existing in its subtle form as the energy of the Lord, but it sometimes manifests this non-existent or temporarily existent nature, the cosmos. An analogy may be made with the father and mother. The mother and the father exist, but sometimes the mother begets children. Similarly, this cosmic manifestation, which comes from the unmanifest material nature of the Supreme Lord, sometimes appears and again disappears. But the material nature is ever existing. And the Lord is the supreme cause of both the subtle and gross manifestations of this material world. Well, yeah, like for example, you can have an hurricane, and it can destroy so many things. So those things that you thought were, substantial and let's say not prone to be destroyed with one big hurricane or one big earthquake, they are destroyed. And living entities become, or human beings become bewildered. That they thought that they were living in houses or buildings that were impenetrable, but yet they were knocked down very easily by these earthquakes and different types of material holocausts. So, therefore, we have to understand the ephemeral nature of existence in the material world and of the body also. Ephemeral means basically at any time it can be destroyed. So, therefore, instead of thinking that we are invincible, we should understand what our limits are. And therefore, in ancient times, the in the Vedic culture, they would perform sacrifices for each of the demigods. Now, there are millions of demigods, so sometimes they would have these very big uh, ceremonies and trying to please all that demigods individually. But along comes Lord Chaitanya and the Vaishnava Acharyas, and they explain that, look, you don't have to please each demigod separately, because the demigods are all the servants of the Supreme Lord Krishna. If you simply please Krishna, then you please all the demigods also. All right, so that makes it now something that can be directly and easily done. Simply worship the supreme personality of Godhead, who is the master of all the demigods. The demigods are the, let's say, agents of the Lord that are the supply agents of the Lord, right? So you have Indra that takes care of this, the rain, and you have Varuna that takes care of the oceans, and so forth. So you don't have to please each one of them. You simply have to please Krishna, who is the supreme personality of Godhead. And now all the demigods will work uh, under the control of Krishna. And therefore, all you have to do is understand your relationship with Krishna and act in it. And then the demigods will supply everything necessary for a simple and happy life. Excuse me. All right. So in this report, it says Devahuti is not unintelligent. She has enough intelligence to understand that the living entities are not on the level of the Supreme Lord because the living entities are not, I'm sorry, because living entities are infinitesimal, they become bewildered or conditioned by material nature. But this does not mean that the Supreme Lord is also conditioned or bewildered. The difference between the conditioned soul and the Lord is that the Lord is the Lord, the master of material nature, and he is therefore not subject to its control. He is controlled neither by spiritual nature nor by material nature. He is the supreme controller himself, and he cannot be compared to the ordinary living entities who are controlled, excuse me, who are controlled by the laws of material nature. Now, if we understand this, now we understand what is the background arrangement of the material nature, and that instead of trying to please each demigod, if we simply please Krishna, all the demigods will be pleased. But it is definitely a fact that there are many controllers in the material nature, and each one of the controllers has a certain level of control. But all of the demigods are controlled by Krishna. So if we simply please Krishna, then all the demigods will be pleased also. So we have the controller of the rain, the controller of the winds, and the controller of the sun, and so forth. So those are, you should not think that all these things are happening automatically without the superintendence of individuals. Just like if you're looking at, if you study, let's say, the city of Seattle, how many people does it take to the make up the government of the city of Seattle? Well, it runs into thousands. And Seattle is basically a small city in a very small, insignificant city in the universe. But it requires uh, thousands of people to uh, make everything work in the city. You have the people who are controlling the water, different aspects of the functioning of the city. So now imagine that's a small city in the universe, like in, uh, it's not actually a formidable thing, but yet there are thousands of people that are necessary to make the city work and function properly. Now imagine the universe. Who's managing the universe, and how many people are there? Well, it's at least 33 million uh, demigods are necessary to manage the different aspects of the universe. So there is a microscopic, let's say, control of things, and there's the macroscopic control of things. Um, Therefore, when we begin to study this, we understand how infinitesimally small the living entity is, and how unimaginably great the material nature is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. That's why in this purport today, it says the relationship of living entities with matter and that of the Supreme Lord with matter are certainly not on the same level. Although the Mayavadis may interpret it in that way, when it is said that the living entities are bewildered, the Mayavadi philosopher ascribed this bewilderment to the Supreme Lord, but that is not applicable. The Lord is never bewildered. That is the difference between personalists and impersonalists. Devahuti is not unintelligent. She has enough intelligence to understand that the living entities are not on the level of the Supreme Lord. Because the living entities are infinitesimal, they become bewildered or conditioned by material nature. But this does not mean that the Supreme Lord is also conditioned or bewildered. The difference between the conditioned soul and the Lord is that the Lord is the Lord, the master of material nature, and he is therefore not subject to its control. He is controlled neither by spiritual nature nor by material nature. He is the supreme controller himself, and he cannot be compared to the ordinary living entities who are controlled by the laws of material nature. Well, this is what we learn in Krishna consciousness. I don't think this is what's being taught in schools today, but this is the fundamental knowledge that we need to have to understand how nature is working, and under the control of who nature is working. The silliness of modern, let's say, science is that the modern scientists think they can eventually control nature. So therefore, they're using so many different techniques to control nature. But one hurricane or one earthquake shows the scientists that they're not in control, and they're never going to be in control. So therefore, let's say the native Indians in North America, they used to worship different, let's say, living entities who manifested uh, like strength. So the eagle and sometimes different animals, they would worship them because they had very powerful, uh, let's say, capabilities. So people oftentimes worship uh, people or animals or things that have, like mountains, that have uh, supernatural powers. Right? Uh, even mountain worship. Previously, mountains used to fly through the air. And it was very dangerous because, rocks could fall off those mountains and easily kill people. So at one point, the mountains uh, uh, were what you would call it. They were um, uh, yeah, they were forced by the power of different yogis to not be able to fly through the air, whereas before in ancient times, mountains could fly through the air, and obviously it was very, very dangerous. So they were cursed by certain uh, sadhus, and therefore they were forced to become, uh, let's say, stay in one place and not fly around. Can you imagine how dangerous it is to see a flying mountain? But such things did exist previously. Okay, so it is said in Vedic literatures, I'm sorry, in the Vedic literatures, it is said that by the glance of the Supreme Lord, the total material energy is impregnated, and then everything is born of material nature. That's how powerful the glance of Krishna is. Simply by his glance, he does not have to, uh, let's say, work. If you want to build a building, well, you have to work. But Krishna can uh, produce things simply by his glance. He doesn't have to do physical work. He has supernatural powers. This is beyond the understanding of modern scientists. But one person called the Supreme Lord or Krishna, simply by his glance, the total material energy is impregnated. Impregnated with what? With seeds of living entities. And then everything is born of the material nature. It is also confirmed in the ninth chapter of Bhagavad Gita that under his glance, meaning Adhyakshena, under his direction and by his will, nature is working. It is not that nature works blindly. After understanding the position of the conditioned souls in relation to the material nature, Devahuti wanted to know how nature works under the direction of the Lord and what the relationship is between the material nature and the Lord. In other words, she wanted to learn the characteristics of the Supreme Lord in relation to the material nature. Well, she's a very intelligent person. The scientists haven't figured this out yet. They don't understand that simply by the glance of the Supreme Lord, the total material energy is impregnated. Impregnated with what? Living entities. And then everything is born of material. Uh, 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 then it says that everything is born of material nature. And it is also confirmed in the ninth chapter of Bhagavad Gita that under his glance, Adhyakshena, under his direction and by his will, nature is working. So the conception of such a powerful, super living entity is very hard for people to understand. That means Krishna is above the understanding of all these mundane scientists and researchers and so forth. And that's why it says there, it is not that nature works blindly. And why don't you look this up? Obviously, nature is working in, let's say, predictable ways. How do the scientists ever ask the question, why is nature acting in predictable ways? Let's see what Mr. Chap says. See, if nature was not acting in predictable ways, there would not be any science, put it like that. But because nature is acting in predictable ways, you can have scientific uh, experimentation and so forth, by which you can understand the laws of nature. If nature was chaotic, you would not be able to understand anything. But nature is controlled and it's acting in predictable ways.
Yeah, so this is a Veda-based chat GPT.
Yeah.
Srila Prabhupada frequently addressed this topic, emphasizing that the scientists often fail to ask the deeper fundamental question, why is nature working in such an orderly fashion? Instead, they focus primarily on how things work without inquiring into the ultimate cause or purpose behind the nature's laws.
Perfect.
Yeah, Prabhupada's views on nature's orderliness. Srila Prabhupada consistently pointed out nature is governed by a higher intelligence. The order and precision observed in nature are not random but are directed by the Supreme Controller Krishna. And he uses the ninth chapter, 10th verse, Maya Dikshena Prakriti Sviti Sacharacharam. This, this material nature, which is one of the my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport that material nature acts as a subordinate agent of Krishna, not autonomously. Scientists often ignore the supreme cause. Prabhupada often criticized modern scientists for focusing only on material causes and effects without acknowledging the spiritual source behind them. In his book, Life Comes from Life, Prabhupada remarks, they are observing nature, but they are not inquiring who is behind the nature. Order implies.
Why? You know why? Then they would have to surrender.
Yeah.
Therefore, they're not interested who's behind nature. They just observe superficially things that are going on in nature. If they understand that there is a supreme controller of nature, they would have to surrender. But they purposely ignore the most important question: who is the supreme personality of Godhead who's controlling everything? They don't want to talk about that at all. Go ahead.
Yeah, what scientists observe but don't question. Number one, precision in nature. The movement of planets, the laws of physics, the regularity of seasons, the biological systems all work with astonishing accuracy. Prabhupada often challenged, if everything is working so perfectly, who is the master planner? Number two, scientists observe but don't question is the uniformity of laws. Why do nature laws remain consistent? For example, gravity acts uniformly across the universe. The sun rises and sets without a fail. Srila Prabhupada argued that such consistency cannot arise from chance, but must have a governing intelligence. The third aspect that scientists observe but don't question is life and consciousness. Scientists often observe life's complexity, but often fail to ask, what is the source of this life and consciousness? Srila Prabhupada frequently stressed that life comes from the life, the soul, not from matter. So the ideal encouraging deeper questions. Srila Prabhupada encouraged questioning the purpose and the cause behind the nature, such as who is the designer? What is the ultimate purpose of the creation? Why does nature follow laws so precisely? These questions, he explained, lead to understanding Krishna, the ultimate cause of all causes, Sarva Karana Karana.
Can you print that out and send it to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, these are fundamental questions that we have to ask. And there are answers to these questions. But the scientists, they're not interested in the origin of things or the finality of things. They're just interested in the middle, how things are working. And there's a word called eschatology. Look that word up. Very interesting word, eschatology. Eschatology is the science of the finality of things. Scientists are not concerned with the beginning of things, nor are they concerned with the end of things. They're just concerned of the middle, how things are working. Because if you want to find out the origin of things, you would have to go back to Krishna. And if you want to find out the finality of things, again, you would have to go to Krishna. Eschatology. What?
How does it spell? Spelling.
Eschatology?
Can't find that.
Eschatology.
Yeah, it's ESCHA
Yeah.
TOLOGY.
Yeah.
Eschatology.
What does it mean?
It refers to the study of last things or the ultimate destiny of the soul and the world. It addresses the questions of death, judgment, and afterlife, and final purpose of existence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Scientists are not concerned with how everything began, and they're not concerned about how everything ends. They're only concerned about how things are happening in the present. Why? Because how can they understand how everything began? There's just speculation. They would not really know how it all began. How it's all going to end? Again, they're not so interested in that because they don't really know what to make of it. So they're in the middle of how things are working right now.
No. Why you bring this? Okay, Mitra, you're a big one. Hey, hello. You are in the meeting.
Yes, CHATOLOGY.
Eschatology is the science of the finality of things.
So the Vedic perspective on eschatology. This is our Veda-based chat GPT. It's actually really good, Maharaj.
What?
This one, Vedic, the Veda-based chat GPT.
Yeah.
Is really good because it's taking all Prabhupada's statements and everything, and then summarizing it so nicely. For example, I just searched on eschatology on this one, as opposed to the generic one. It talks about Vedic perspective on eschatology. Number one, the eternal nature of soul. The soul is eternal, distinct from the temporary material body. And then gives the reference to Bhagavad Gita 2.20. For the soul, there is neither birth nor death. It has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not be come into being. It is unborn, eternal, everlasting, ever existing, and primeval. It is not slain, and the body is slain. Srila Prabhupada emphasizes that understanding the eternal nature of the soul is foundational to addressing the eschatological questions.
Eschatology means the finality of things.
It also talks about the cycle of birth and death, samsara. The material world operates under the laws of karma, which bind the soul in the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. The ultimate goal is liberation from this cycle and return to the spiritual realm where the soul eternally lives and serves Krishna. Liberation. True liberation is not merging into impersonal Brahman, but entering into Krishna's personal abode, Golok Vrindavan, to engage in loving devotional service. Bhagavad Gita 8.16. From the highest planet to the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery, wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. Judgment and afterlife. In the Vedic tradition, Yamaraja, the Lord of Death, evaluates the soul's actions and assigns the next destination based on its karma and desires. However, devotees of Krishna are not judged by Yamaraj. By surrendering to Krishna and chanting his holy names, they transcend the jurisdiction of karma.
Very important statement. They transcend the jurisdiction of karma. So that means that devotees have what's called akarmic lives. Why? Because they have no desire to control material nature. They are engaged all the time in devotional service without any desire for fame, wealth, knowledge, etc. They have no personal agenda. Their only desire is to please the Lord. Therefore, they are free of karma. Karma builds up when you have personal desires and you act to achieve those personal goals. Then you get caught in the cycle of birth and death. But when you have no personal agenda other than to please the Lord, now you become karma free. So therefore, the life of a devotee, a pure devotee, is to be karma free. He or she is no longer aspiring to become, famous person or a powerful person or anything like that. And is satisfied with being very humble and serving the Lord with love and devotion. So the most powerful person is not the conqueror or the most intelligent person. The most important person is one who's completely surrendered to Krishna. By being completely surrendered to Krishna, then Krishna takes over and guides you through all the different situations of life so that you can go back to life. But to do that, we have to surrender to the Lord.
The previous one.
Yeah. Very good. Nice. Okay.
Oh, time check. You want to open for questions, Maharaj?
Do the scientists ever ask the question why the nature is working in an orderly fashion? Srila Prabhupada frequently addressed this topic, emphasizing that scientists often fail to ask the deeper fundamental question: why is nature working in such an orderly fashion? Instead, they focus primarily on how things work, without inquiring into the ultimate cause or purpose behind nature's laws. Prabhupada's view on nature's orderliness. Srila Prabhupada consistently pointed out: 1. Nature is governed by a higher intelligence. The order and precision observed in nature are not random, but are directed by the Supreme Controller, Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita 9.10, Krishna states, "This material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings under its rule. Its manifestation is created and annihilated again. Ayadakshya Bhakti Characharam Itanani Kunteya Jagat Viparivartate." Very important verse. Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport that material nature acts as a subordinate agent, not autonomously. Scientists often ignore the supreme cause. Prabhupada also often criticized modern scientists for focusing only on material causes and effects without acknowledging the spiritual source behind them. In his book, Life Comes from Life, Prabhupada remarks, they are observing nature, but they are not inquiring who is behind nature. A great statement. Order implies intelligence. Just as a machine requires an operator, nature's complex systems require a divine intelligence to govern them. He used the analogy of a clock. If you see a clock working perfectly, you understand that an intelligent person has made it. Similarly, the universe operates perfectly because of the supreme intelligence behind it. What scientists observe but don't question: the movement of planets, the laws of physics, the regularity of seasons, and biological systems all work with astonishing accuracy. Prabhupada often challenged, if everything is working so perfectly, who is the master planner? Uniformity of laws. Why do natural laws remain consistent? For example, gravity acts uniformly across the universe. The sun rises and sets without fail. Srila Prabhupada argued that such consistency cannot arise from chance, but must have a governing intelligence. Life and consciousness. Scientists observe life complexity, but often fail to ask, what is the source of life and consciousness? Srila Prabhupada frequently stressed that life comes from the soul, not from matter. Life comes from life, not from matter. Srila Prabhupada encouraged questioning the purpose and cause behind nature's order. Who is the designer? What is the ultimate purpose of creation? Why does nature follow laws so precisely? These questions, he explained, led to understanding Krishna, the ultimate cause of all causes, Sarva Karana Karanam. Conclusion. While modern scientists are adept at uncovering the workings of natural phenomena, they often overlook the philosophical and spiritual question of why nature works so harmoniously. Srila Prabhupada urged both scientists and the general public to transcend material observation and recognize the divine intelligence of Krishna behind all creation. Okay, so then there's a question here by Chap, whatever.
Witty.
Yeah. Would you like to explore specific conversations or references from Srila Prabhupada's works on this subject? Answer, yes. Yeah, this should be our homework to find out more about this subject. Would you like to explore specific conversations or references from spiritual Prabhupada's works on this subject? What is this subject? Why nature works in a organized way? How did it happen? How is it being maintained? Who is controlling it? Obviously, Elon Musk is not controlling it. Although they promise that they're going to control it. But why would you promise that they can control it when it's already being controlled? You see, that just shows how arrogant they are. If nature was not acting in a predictable way, there would not be science. There would be chaos. So you wouldn't be able to know from 1 second to the next second what's going to happen. Right? But because it's functioning in an orderly way, then you have to understand that there's someone controlling it. If everything was, let's say, unpredictable, there wouldn't be science. Therefore, there's someone behind it, this organizing the predictability. It's pretty easy to understand that, but the scientists don't want to think about it. That's why there's something called the uh, the uh, the think. So there are different things that you learn in school, but there's also it's called I have to think about this. Forgetting. Anyway, we know that there is predictability in nature today. That's why they can tell you what the weather's going to be like tomorrow, right? They have a good probability of getting it right. So that means that nature is following certain rules and regulations. And therefore, there's some level of predictability of what nature's going to do tomorrow. So therefore, what scientists observe but don't question? Point one, precision in nature. In other words, the predictability of nature. Two, uniformity of laws. Three, life and consciousness. And then there are deeper questions. Srila Prabhupada encouraged questioning the purpose and cause behind nature's order. Who is the designer? What is the ultimate purpose of creation? Why does nature follow laws so precisely?
Which are the specific conversations and references.
Okay, on the topic. Great. All right, I got my homework.
One question, Guru Maharaj.
In order to have homework, you have to have questions. You don't ask any questions, there's no.
One question, Guru Maharaj.
Huh? Yeah.
One question. And the Bhagavad Gita 9.10 says Maya Dakshina Prakriti. Means Krishna has stated that he is the superintendent of material nature, but we give credit to Durga Devi as the superintendent of material nature.
She's working, oh, it's just like, you know, you have a president, and then you have a vice president, then you have other officials working under the president. Durga is just working under the order of Krishna. She's not working independently. No one is independent, right? None of us are independent, right? We don't know how our body is functioning every day, the heart beats, the production of blood. We produce blood in this body. That's a miracle. You see, so many miraculous things are happening just in our body. And so obviously we're not in control of them. But unless that was happening, we would not be able to live. So when you begin to think rationally about our position, we're completely dependent on outside forces. We're not in control of everything that we're doing. And without the help of this outside forces, we would die immediately. So these things have to be discussed. That's why there's philosophy. Philosophy discusses questions like that, right? And people have been asking these type of questions since the beginning. But they didn't have chat, whatever,
GPT.
ChatGPT.
GPT, yeah, they didn't have chat GPT.
So Maharaj, during the school days, like we were educated like scientists are like very superior person, and like you're very insignificant, and scientists are like a very superior position. They are teaching their discoveries. Nowhere they taught us like, okay, there is something superior to scientists, that is Krishna. We know from our home background, but we never compared that those scientists are also insignificant.
Yeah, I was on a morning walk with Srila Prabhupada, and he was lampooning, he was really criticizing the scientists. And I said to Srila Prabhupada, I said, Srila Prabhupada, I've never heard anyone lampoon or criticize the scientists. What you just said now. I said, I've never heard this before. And he said, yes, I can do this. I can do this. Do you know why I can do this? And I was like stunned. You know, he looked at me, pointed his finger, and said, you know why I can do this? He said, because I know that Krishna is behind everything. I know this. I know this. Therefore, I can do it. And he was serious when he said that. He was looking at me right directly into my eyes, penetrating me. I said, I know, you know, I know this. I know this. So you don't have to be a scientist to know the truth. You have to be surrendered to a pure devotee. Then you can know the truth. So just having a lot of information is not real, let's say, knowledge. Understanding who is behind everything, that's knowledge. That Krishna is behind everything. He's the supreme personality of Godhead. We have to be convinced of that. And that's why Prabhupada said, I can challenge the scientists because I know that Krishna is behind everything. I lost my breath when he said that. He looked at me directly at me, pointed his finger like that. I know this, I know this, I know this. So we have to have that same type of faith that Krishna is behind everything. It's not that this scientist is behind everything or so forth. Krishna is the supreme personality of God who is behind everything. We have to have that baseline faith. Okay. All right, we'll stop there. Continue tomorrow. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. We'll look at this purport again tomorrow. Oh, I got some homework. Want some homework up? Get this copy. Okay, yeah. Srila Prabhupada's conversation with a scientist, with Swarup Damodar Maharaj. In a conversation with Dr. Swarup Damodara, a devotee and scientist, Srila Prabhupada discussed the origin and order of nature. Prabhupada, the laws of nature are going on so nicely, but who has made these laws? The scientists say that everything is going on automatically. How can this be? Everything has a cause. The sun is rising exactly at the right time every day. Who has fixed this arrangement? This was on a morning walk in Los Angeles in May 1973. Prabhupada challenged the idea of automatic natural processes and stressed that the existence of laws proves the existence of a lawmaker. Point 2, his critique of scientists' limited vision. Prabhupada often remarked that scientists focus on material observations, but neglect the intelligence behind them. Prabhupada, they are observing nature's functioning, but they are not asking who has made this arrangement. If a machine works perfectly, there must be an operator. How can such a complex universe operate without a controller? In these discussions, he encouraged scientists to investigate the ultimate cause, Krishna, as described in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.1. The absolute truth is he from whom everything emanates. Next point, the brain behind nature. Prabhupada often emphasized that nature operates under the direction of the supreme intelligence. Behind nature, there is a brain. A child may see an airplane fly and think it is automatic, but an intelligent person knows there is a pilot. He argued that the precise functioning of the universe, like the planetary orbits or the transformation of a seed into a tree, requires a director. Scientists cannot make even a small seed, but Krishna has made all the seeds, and each one grows to a specific plant or tree. Can this be chance? Next point, the law of karma in nature. Prabhupada also explained that the laws of nature are connected to the laws of karma. Nature works under Krishna's direction to reward or punish living entities according to their karma. Scientists observe nature's workings, but do not understand that it acts according to a higher plan. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 9:10, this material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction. Prabhupada elaborates in the purport. It is not blind, for nature is acting under the direction of the Supreme Lord. Maya dakshina prakriti suti sachara chara hitanane konte chara parivartate. As Lord Krishna says, I am behind nature. Srila Prabhupada's challenge to randomness. Prabhupada frequently challenged the concept that natural order arises by chance. If you throw a pile of bricks in the air, they will never form a building. Similarly, the complex systems of the universe cannot arise by chance. That's a great example. That's a great example. The so-called Big Bang theory is childish nonsense. Prabhupada is fantastic, amazing. He argued that randomness cannot produce precision. The planets are moving in their orbits with perfect timing. The seasons change exactly as they should. This is not chance. It is Krishna's plan. Dialogue on evolution. Prabhupada engaged in conversations about evolution, pointing out that while the scientists describe biological progression, they do not address the cause behind it. Prabhupada says, Darwin says life evolves, but he does not know who is directing the evolution. Evolution occurs under Krishna's supervision to fulfill the desires of the soul. Nature is simply Krishna's agent. This is on a morning walk in 1973. This aligns with Bhagavad Gita 13:23. Yet in this body there's another, a transcendental enjoyer who is the Lord, the supreme proprietor who exists as the overseer and permitter. The scientist should ask why. Prabhupada also stressed the need for scientists to go beyond material explanations. The scientists are studying only the outer cover of nature. They're not asking why it exists and who created it. Unless they understand Krishna, their knowledge remains incomplete. Conclusion. Srila Prabhupada consistently encouraged scientists to move beyond superficial observation and explore the deeper spiritual truths behind nature's order. By recognizing Krishna as the supreme controller, they could transform their understanding of the universe. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Bol. Yeah. Scientists are not asking questions. They're just experimenting. There's that. They don't ask real questions. Who made this? They're not interested. Because then they would have to believe that there's God. They don't ask that question, who made this? They just say, oh, we discovered this. It's already been discovered by somebody else, right? But they say, oh no, we just discovered this, It's all nonsense, all fake nonsense.
Yesterday we had
Huh?
an interesting example with the my manager for a report to Microsoft. So we went for a team lunch, just because yesterday was the Karthik Purnami. Just hinted that somebody brought up today's Karthik Purnami. That 4 out of 6 people they opted to vegetarian, and the manager who is Indian. Even after we shared this information, and the majority of us are not eating meat, he still chose to eat meat yesterday. And I told him also, this Kartik month, if you do good,
If you don't eat meat, if you don't eat meat.
If you do good, 1,000 times benefited. If you do anything that is not uh, suitable,
Sattvic, sattvic,
sattvic, then bad also it's 1,000 times.
yes.
So if you eat, you so
Don't,
then
don't eat meat.
yeah, kind of the same. Then he said, suddenly he said, God is everywhere.
Oh, yeah, that's the my body philosophy. God is everywhere.
And then God is everywhere. And then I didn't want, because it's my nature.
Yeah,
I
I didn't want to argue with you.
Sorry. Then he said, and he still continued to eat.
What?
They still continue to eat.
Eat meat.
Yeah. And then, and he's also sharing that today he's attending Satyanarayana Vrat.
He's doing what?
He's attending Satyanarayana Vrat.
Today.
I told him, okay, then you have to attend 999 more to compensate what you've done.
Oh, he's only going to do it once a year. In Narayana. You know, just that this is the statement, Satya Narayana, it means that Narayana tells the truth. But you don't have to say Satya Narayana. I mean, obviously he tells the truth. He's not a liar, right? So just the word Satya Narayana shows that they're not actually, devotees. They think that they have to emphasize that Narayana is not telling the truth.
There's so much bewilderment to Maharaj. They think God is everywhere. They can do anything they want. This is their illusion.
Well, they all end up with, cancer or accidents, losing their job, or this or that, getting divorced, getting sick. Of course. You have to wait because Maya is on our side. So you have to be patient and wait and be like a first, call that first, when there's an accident, the first responders. Yeah, we have to be first responders. Because if you wait patiently, all these people are going to get bewildered by something, right? And at that point, they might ask you some questions. Why is this happening to me? So we're the first responders.
Very good analogy.
So your guy there, he's a Hindu, right?
Yes.
Does he come to the temple at all? Does he go to any temple? Maybe.
Yeah, hardly to any
He's too busy making money.
time. They don't even make that much money, Guru Maharaj.
Really?
Yeah, that's the illusion.
So they're like working all the time then.
Yeah, seems like working. Seems like
Yeah.
seems like working all the time. Watching a lot of TV. I think that's what I can say.
Really?
Yeah.
For relaxation.
Yeah, he stays in the shares in the team. Every Monday we start our day. He asks everybody what you guys did. I always tell my temple services.
Okay, what do they say?
Their time is I watch this, I watch that, I watch this, I watch that.
Yeah. I watched life go past me. So you every Monday morning you all sit down and say what you did on the weekend.
Yeah, that's the culture they have.
Wow,
Big share.
that means you have to hear a lot of nonsense.
Yeah. But at least Krishna is giving me opportunity to share devotees life every Monday when they ask the same thing. They are always busy, occupied with Krishna services, helping the community, serving the community, being joyful.
Well, they might respect that.
Yes, I respect. And they come to a place that because they have been hearing me for a year.
Yeah.
And they come to understanding that they don't know how I do these things. I think then good.
Well, because of good association. You're not doing it in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Everything depends on who you associate with. You associate with nonsense people, you become nonsense. You associate with devotees, you become a devotee. Unfortunately, all these highly educated Hindus that are associating with nonsense people.
They're not
Too
even
much.
highly educated.
Huh?
They're not even highly educated.
Oh, okay.
So far, the highly educated.
Yeah. Well, they're just basically work mules.
Yeah, yeah. Good analogy.
They know how to do, certain functions.
Yeah. Yeah, right now, they're feeding the tummy and gratifying their senses. So
Well, the
that
the
is more
the
for them.
the picture of a donkey
Uh,
is walking because there's a string and a branch, and it's holding a carrot,
uh,
but in front of the donkey. He can't reach it because there's a string. Oh, there's a branch, and the carrot is tied to the branch, and it's moving around, but in front of him. So he starts walking, trying to get to the carrot that he never gets to.
yeah.
And this way he's tricked into
Yeah.
walking. Because donkeys can be very, very you know uh, non-compliant. They can sit down and they refuse to move, or they can refuse to move. So they make this trick where they get a stick and a rope, right, and a carrot, right, and they put it, like this in front of the donkey. The donkey sees the carrot, so he wants to eat it. So he starts walking now.
Never gets it and then what?
Yeah. So they trick the donkey to work. So that's basically what the CEOs are doing.
Yeah.
They have their carrots and the stick, and the people are following. They're trying to get the uh, the carrots, but they can't reach it. So they're working day and night.
Good analogy.
Okay, so we had some interesting discussion today. I'm going to do my homework. But if you want to print out and these pages, you can.
Yes, Maharaj, we'll get it.
Share it.
We'll share on the.
Okay. Good. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jai. Hare Krishna. Hare
Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare
Hare Rama.
Hare Rama.
Rama Ram.